We are at a flashpoint in history, financially, monetarily, politically, socially. There literally is a tiny, tiny window left for people to protect themselves before all hell breaks loose. And so I think that they are losing control of the silver market, and pretty soon they're going to lose control of the gold market too.
Hey guys, the call you're about to hear right now, the first part of this call is an update that we're doing live here on Sunday the 3rd. I want to wish everybody a happy Independence Day tomorrow for those of you who know what that means. I think it means standing up against the tyrants who want to enslave us in all their many forms. Andy Hoffman is going to give us an update. The main call you're about to hear was recorded on Thursday, but Friday's move in silver was so significant and unexpected that I wanted to get Andy on to get his in-the-moment opinions on all the action on Friday. Andy, thanks for joining us on short notice here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's funny that you say that the move in silver was unexpected, because we've been expecting this to happen for years and years. We just could never guess what day. And when you think about when it has happened, keep in mind a month ago I wrote an article that called Brexit the most important and precious metal bullish election in history. It's not a surprise, but then again, we've had 4 years of misery in this sector, so we just don't expect things to happen even when they should.
Well, that's right. We didn't know when this move would happen. It seems to be happening in earnest. Let me ask you this, Andy. What did you make of what happened on the COMEX? Any reports or any data you want to share that you saw on Friday?
Well, look, you go back to 3 weeks ago, I wrote, finally, the long-awaited commercial signal failure is nigh, because I saw that gambit during May to get the price down by saying the Fed was going to raise rates, which they never were going to in the first place, and of course they didn't. It didn't work because the commercial's all-time high short position going into that, they were not able to cover, and trust me, that was the only reason that they did that. And then when I saw a week before the Brexit that they had taken their short positions, their all-time high naked short positions, even larger, particularly in gold where they went berserk, then I wrote another article saying, spread the word, the gold cartel is in deep, deep trouble. And so then when I saw what happened on Friday and I realized, let me see what happened with the COT report on Friday, and I saw that, yes, again, they dramatically raised their gold and silver shorts going into what happened on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I said to myself, they really are at the end of their rope, because the entire world realizes that the emperor has no clothes. And particularly in silver, which, as we both know, has been the canary in the coal mine, the market that's going to ultimately be their Achilles heel that breaks them. They're down to an all-time low record, an all-time low level of inventory at the COMEX, something like 350 or 400 million, not billion, $1 million. So when you see what happened the other day, and you see, by the way, the gold-silver ratio broke down below 2-year support, you realize that the end game truly is near. Of course, the bigger picture is why the end game is here, and that's because of what's going on. It's because of all the QE that's been announced or is going to be announced as a result of Brexit. The Bank of England said we're going to do it. The ECB bank pretty much said we're going to do more, and the Bank of Japan has, quote, instructed its people to maintain stability, which means more QE. And then, of course, there's that red herring, the Federal Reserve, that's waiting and wait. So the article that I just wrote this weekend is called The Imminent, and the imminent arrival of QE to infinity and hyperinflation has arrived, because I think right now the entire world is starting to realize that central bank credibility is dead, and the only tool that they have left in their arsenal is hyperinflating their currencies.
All right, Andy, thank you for that update. And now let's talk Deutsche Bank. You talk about central banking and the loss of confidence in central banks. Let's talk about Deutsche Bank, the poster boy for the derivatives Ponzi. What do you make of the action in Deutsche Bank?
The Lehman of Europe is now the systematically most dangerous bank in Europe. That's what the IMF called it last night after it failed the Fed's layup softball stress test. And in fact, they weren't the only one that failed. The other bank that failed was Bank Santander, which is by far the largest bank in Spain. So there's lots of smoke, there's going to be lots of fire. And as you said, the stock is now down pretty much to within 15 or 20 cents of its all-time low that was achieved right after the Brexit. And as we're talking about minutes before you called me, Mark Carney, the Bank of England head from Goldman Sachs, said that the Bank of England is going to reduce interest rates this summer as soon as July, meaning as soon as 2 weeks from now. And when you think about that QE and money printing is the reason why we have all these problems. It's the reason why Deutsche Bank's falling apart. And when you think of the sheer lunacy of a currency that has just fallen by 15% in the past week, to say that we are going to devalue it further and somehow think that that's going to help the situation, let alone when you're already amidst a giant global financial crisis, is beyond me.
Yeah, I have to bring this up. It's usually the thing we conclude with when we start talking about physical precious metals, but I think we should lead with it here because when you say, the pound has lost some 15% of its value in, what, a week, did you just say?
Yeah, well, since the Brexit, it went from 150 and right now it's 1.33.
Yeah, people need to realize that they are being whipsawed by these criminal central banks and the activities of the guys like Mark Carney. I mean, they're going to do whatever it takes to try to keep this criminal system stitched together. And the only thing that you can do, the only thing any of us can do to try to protect our physical financial sovereignty is to buy physical precious metals. Because again, if you take a look at currencies around the globe, Andy, gold's near an all-time high. It's not going to be too long before that's the case with the dollar as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get to that in a second, especially silver. But again, you talk about the derivatives book and lowering interest rates. These are the kind of things that make derivatives books get worse. And the fact that Deutsche Bank and others are so close to the end game, all these actions that they're taking are only going to exacerbate them and make them get closer. And when you talk about what you can do, again, as you said, the price of gold on average, I would say on average, if you average the 180 currencies around the world, gold's at an all-time high. In some places it's way above the all-time high, like in, let's say, Russia or Venezuela. And in some places, some very, very, quote, first world nations like Japan and Australia and Canada and Mexico were just about at or slightly below all-time highs. And then, of course, you have like the United States where it's about 30% below because it's the center of the manipulation. But pretty soon it'll be above in all levels. And what you're talking about with the cartel is, my article yesterday was called Spread the Word, the cartel is in deep, deep trouble. And that follows up an article I wrote back 3 weeks ago that said finally the long-awaited commercial signal failure, or meaning when the banks like the JP Morgans get blown out of the water in the COMEX, is nigh. And the reason is that they took their short positions, their naked short positions on the COMEX to all-time highs back in May. And they figured, well, if we go to this gambit where we pretend that we're going to raise rates and smack the prices, maybe we can cover the shorts. But they couldn't cover the shorts. As we found out when the price, right after Janet Yellen's super dovish statement in June, when we found out that the commercials had not covered their shorts, we realized, wow, they are in trouble. There's some serious competition to buy what's left on the COMEX. And then it turns out the next week they massively added to those shorts right before the Brexit. I think that there's blood in the water, and there's a reason I wrote a couple of weeks ago that we're getting ready for the upcoming historic silver shortage, because we've had shortages in 2008, 11, 13, and 15, the last couple without any visible crisis. And I think that, especially what I see at Miles Franco in the post-Brexit era, huge amounts of buying. I expect we're going to have a shortage. And again, most of the world, you can't buy precious metals. Either it's not available, or the taxes, or the shipping, or the regulations. So for most of the world, it's already too late to do it. And ironically, you're over here in the United States where you need it most, and you actually can still get it at these subsidized prices, which won't be for long, because we talk about silver here. Silver, people don't even realize. I talk about the line in the sand at $18 an ounce that they've been holding. I just looked today to see how long it's been. It's been 2 years that they've held it under $18 an ounce. And here, as I look at it today, it's up to $18.50, which is above even the spike high right after the Brexit. So I think that they are losing control of the silver market, and pretty soon they're going to lose control of the gold market too.
Yeah, let's talk about the significance of silver safely over 18 at this point. You say it hasn't been there since, for 2 years. What is the significance of this move in silver? $18 mark was a psychological barrier. I wonder why they couldn't defend it, Andy. Is this whole thing just falling apart at the seams?
Yeah, well, they picked the number arbitrarily. There's nothing inherent about it. Certainly at $18 an ounce, they did a huge amount of damage to the to the mining industry, and that's why we've now reached peak production. Unequivocally, silver production is peak because not only is the primary miners have no more to grow with, but 2/3 of all the silver production comes from secondary mining of copper, lead, and zinc, which have all fallen dramatically, and there's going to be a lot of mine closures. So, that, by keeping it down there, that's all they really did, aside from create this massive demand, which is why there's almost no inventories left. On the COMEX, there's only about $380 million worth of inventory total. Million, not billion. And of course, we have record demand. Look at the U.S. Mint. Month after month, year after year, we're hitting new records. Indian silver imports were the highest ever last year, and you can bet they're going to be higher this year. So, we're hitting the perfect storm. Silver is always going to be the flashpoint because it's so much tighter. There's so much less supply out there, and it's so much more manipulated. Then when it finally goes, it goes. And I mean, look, we had a taste of this back in 2011 when the price went in October 10th of 2010 when it was about, 18 or 20 bucks. That's when Sprott did his silver his silver closed-end fund, the PSLV IPO. And immediately, within 3 or 4 months, the price went up to $50 an ounce. And you're going to see that kind of illiquidity on the way up as the cartel loses control because there's just not the physical to support the prices here, and there's no longer going to be the paper. I don't think anyone's going to believe me. I think people really need to understand what just happened on the COMEX. Forget the Brexit. Before the Brexit, when they were trying to cover their shorts, when they did what I called the FOMC minutes attack, when in May they pretended that they were thinking about raising rates, even though they never said they were going to. They just pretended, let's say that we're thinking about it and we'll hit the price while we say it so that people think that we're going to. And the fact is, that was their goal. Their goal was to cover their shorts, and they couldn't do it. And I'm saying that's the big red blaring signal that the institutional demand has become so powerful that the commercials cannot cover their shorts anymore. And I think I personally think that when we see the COT report tomorrow afternoon at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that is Friday, we're going to see such enormous increases in shorting of the paper, gold, and silver that it's just going to scream to the world, wow, this emperor not only has no clothes, but they couldn't get any clothes if they tried. So I really think that, this canary in the coal mine that's been one of the main tools for the ability to keep the semblance of stability going on is falling out from under them. And then, of course, you have the actual real world. I'm watching them trying to keep stock prices up today, and yet look at Deutsche Bank sitting right near its lows. Look at Treasury bonds surging. I just wrote in my article today, even I'm astounded by this. I think maybe 2 months ago, there was about $9 trillion of sovereign bonds that were negative yielding. Yeah. And then at the end of May, there were 10.3. Now there's 11.7. Mm-hmm. By next week, there could be all of them. I think every Swiss bond now, every single one going out to like 100 years is negative yielding. So again, we are at a flashpoint in history, people, financially, monetarily, politically, socially. There literally is a tiny, tiny window left for people to protect themselves before all hell breaks loose. And trust me, when a company like Deutsche Bank goes under, and there's a reason why I'm calling it the Lehman of Europe, it's going to be cataclysm like we haven't seen before. And maybe it's not Deutsche Bank that goes first, but it's going to be something just as big.
I've called this an inflection point for humanity after Brexit. Things are only getting worse. And I think for any of the naysayers out there, those listening who say, you can get silver all day long, just go to Miles Franklin, go to Amex, go to SD Bullion, there's plenty of silver. People need to understand, Andy, that that's really an illusion. The supply is finite and demand is outstripping supply. It's quantifiable. Silver Eagle all-time record sales, Canadian Maple all-time record sales. And people can't walk into Walmart, Target, or their local bank to get it. So only those in the know can get the physical. It's out there, but very, very, very precious few of us know about this. Very few people are following this. Precious few of our friends, neighbors, and colleagues have physical precious metal. 99.9% of the American population does not.
Right. Well, again, in all these other countries where the price is at an all-time high, I assure you people are starting to get to know it. It's amazing. We sit here in America and people don't realize the price of gold in Canada is within, 5 or 10% an all-time high. In Mexico, it just hit an all-time high. A few miles to the north and the south, people are very, very well aware of what the prices are. Unfortunately, in most of the world, including in most parts of Mexico, even if you have those prices, you have your skyrocketing inflation, which this crisis is only making much worse because all the currencies are crashing. You can't get gold and silver. You just can't. Fortunately, the United States has the best supply chain out there. But unfortunately, we don't have much supply either. That's why we keep having shortages. That's why we're the biggest net importer of silver in the world after India, because we need silver for industry. We need silver for the U.S. Mint. So again, we have had shortages. In 2008 was a catastrophic shortage. The premiums doubled, meaning you paid twice as much for silver is what the price you saw on the screen, and you had to wait 3-4 months for it. We also had a major shortage in 2011 when price is up, which shows you how inelastic the price is, whether it's plummeting or surging. People want the metal. And then we had shortages in 2013, and if you could believe this, last summer, July, August, September, were Miles Franklin's cumulative 3 biggest months ever that it had, and there wasn't even a visible crisis out there that started it. So again, the supply is razor thin, and now that we're heading into this dramatic crisis, which I think will be much worse than 2008, with much less supply and much less demand. I mean, of course, we're going to run. Remember, when we ran out of supply in 2008, the total demand in the world was only a third of what it is today. And of course, it's going to be a lot more. It could be twice as much as it is today, a month from now, with the way things are going. The way to look at the way how silver sentiment changes, it's kind of like that scene in Jurassic Park where they're out in the field and they're looking at that group of bird-like dinosaurs running like a herd, and then they all of a sudden shift direction and come right at them. I mean, that's what happens. You look at the premiums, okay, spot plus a few bucks, no big deal. And then a week later, the premiums have doubled and tripled, and we're telling you have to wait 2 months for it. I mean, that's how it works. And we're talking about historic crisis. And again, it's not like, it's a crisis that's going to come in the future. It's here right now. It's here in most of the world right now. It's even here in the United States right now, the way our economy is going. Look at our political system. We have a crazy election going on with the same kind of thing as with Brexit, with anti-establishment candidates and everything. So again, I can't emphasize enough. I mean, I've spent all these years saying it, and you have as well. Protect yourself while you still can. This is the no-brainer of all time.
Yeah, and let's just turn our attention back to the layman of Europe, Deutsche Bank, and derivatives, because you know what the problem is in derivatives, Andy, and so do I, but the CNBC won't tell people about it. They'll say it's a zero-sum game. For every winner, there's a loser. The problem is leverage. Anybody that's ever had a margin account, right, a brokerage account with margin, knows how much trouble you can get to just by doubling down on your bets with half the money. These banks are leveraged to the hilt, some to the measure of 50 to 1, 55 to 1, maybe it's even 100 to 1 in some cases. Can Deutsche Bank be saved? I think I know what the answer is. And if it can't be saved, how does this play out?
Well, it's not just Deutsche Bank. It's all of them. I mean, they're not the only one. They're the one with the biggest derivatives book, but everyone talks about how the derivatives book at 70 plus trillion is the biggest on the planet. Yeah, but JP Morgan's is just slightly lower than that. I mean, I don't know exactly what it is about their book that people are worried about, probably because they have so much exposure to Europe. I mean, if you have a collapsing euro and a splinter in Europe, you're going to see it more immediately, but they have huge exposure to JP Morgan and vice versa, and all the other derivatives books out there. So they're all going to go. And no, of course they can't be saved. I mean, which bank has the biggest leverage of all? It's just the Federal Reserve. I think it's leveraged by 40 to 1. And it's leveraged with a $4.5 trillion balance sheet of, by the way, over, treasury bonds, which are close to negative yielding at high duration bonds. So again, no, nothing can be saved. It doesn't matter. No people or policies can save it now. The only thing that can save the system is for it to be destroyed and start all over again. I mean, that's how it's worked 1,000 times throughout history, and it'll happen 1,001 times. Except again, I can't emphasize enough, this is the only time in history where every single currency is backed by nothing, and every single currency is in the late stage of the Ponzi scheme, where they built up so much debt that they're choking on it. So again, there's nothing. I mean, this announcement that the Bank of England is saying they've been at 0.5% their interest rate for like 7 or 8 years, so they're going to lower interest rates. Do they really think that that's going to help? Of course not. All it's going to do is cause more currency wars, because the Fed will say, well, we're at 0.5%. We got to go back down to 0% also, until eventually everyone is at negative yields. And that's when hyperinflation is going to inevitably arrive.
All right, last question. Your thoughts on Brexit? We see now Germany and France talking about trying to create some sort of EU superstate. How does this play out? Is the EU dream dead, or was some of this by design and they just want to ensnare humanity further in their debt machinations? I think they've lost control. V. the Guerrilla Economist thinks they've lost control. Bill Holter thinks they've lost control. But we hear some naysayers say, nope, this is all by design. What is your take on Brexit?
Well, I think you know my view. I don't think there's any grand plan behind it. I think they're Keystone Cops that wake up every day playing defense and always have been. And they used the good times back 20 years ago to get some of the things they wanted, like a European Union. Everyone said, sure, that sounds good. Greece said, yeah, that's great. We can borrow some money cheap and et cetera. And here we are today. I mean, you're talking about a super union. No, they're not. I mean, Merkel is going to be kicked out. Holland is going to be kicked out. Marine Le Pen, who's going to be the next president, is calling for a European spring. I can't see how anyone. I mean, you saw the footage of what's going on in the European Parliament. It's utter chaos right now. I think it's. I've said all along. I mean that the euro currency is toast. The European Union is completely toast. I can't see how. I can't even see what the impetus is going to be to try to save it. Like when I see these things about, well, they're going to offer concessions to England and maybe they'll get a new vote in a year. And I'm going, no, they won't. Are you kidding me? That ship has sailed. England is gone. And with it, it has started the European spring, and it's going to be the end of the European Union. And what that means is lots of debt defaults, hundreds of billions, trillions of debt defaults and currency devaluations in the coming years. And when you see right away the Bank of England saying, we're going to devalue the currency after it just fell 15% in a week, just shows you exactly what is headed for the entire world in the very near term, as in 2016.
Okay, last question. This is officially the last question. I've cited many times in the past, you know this, we've talked about it, that Rothschild Economist magazine from 1988 with the phoenix rising from a burning pile of fiat dollars. And around the phoenix's neck is a gold coin that says 2018. And the cover said, get ready for a world currency. Do you think they're on track, or have they completely lost control of that now 30-year-old vision, Andy? And also, as an addendum to that question, where does the dollar's future stand?
Well, again, I have no idea what the purpose of that or the meaning was, and it would certainly be pretty good timing if it actually turned out to be that this whole thing finally falls apart in 2018, although arguably I'd say that it's not going to last that long. I don't know on that. As far as what do I think is going to happen to the dollar, I've said all along, the dollar is going to, I've said it for years. I didn't just say this when these crises started. I said it 2 years ago because I saw what happened in 2008. The dollar is going to continue to explode higher as financial markets collapse because it's the most liquid. No other reason. It's the most liquid. It's the reserve currency. It's a declining reserve currency. It's losing its purchasing power against real items of value very quickly. But against other currencies, it's going to continue to soar because of liquidity, which is only going to cause the inequalities and issues in the global economy to get exponentially worse. It's not a good thing. It's certainly better to be an American when the dollar is strengthening than something else. But as far as global economic fundamentals, it's just going to cause them to collapse further. But ultimately, it's not a matter of where it trades against other currencies. It's a matter of its purchasing power. And the Fed will continue to destroy it further and further and further. And, I like I said, I have my title for my article when the Fed announces it's cutting rates and going to QE4. It's called Ding Dong, the Fed is dead. I already said central banks are dead after what Janet Yellen, her dovish statement a month ago. But the Fed itself, the King Central Bank, will be dead officially when they join the Bank of England in lowering rates again and permanently giving everyone the realization that every central bank has no clothes.
All right, guys. Well, this is why we talk to Andy Hoffman as often as we do. We like to document the collapse in a way that CNBC prefers not to. I guess maybe unless they're interviewing Peter Schiff from time to time. You don't generally get this information from the Mockingbird mainstream media, nor can you get physical precious metals from your local bank. Andy, tell people how to get a hold of you if they want to protect themselves with physical silver or gold.
Again, Miles Franklin, been around 27 years, not a single registered complaint against us in all that time. And actually, Minnesota, our home state, is the only state of in the nation that actually has state regulations for bullion dealers. And I think that's quite important given what's been going on in the very opaque, unregulated business, in this business for the last few years. So again, you can always, I write every day for free at milesfranklin.com. You can email me at ahoffman@milesfranklin.com, or of course, call us at 800-822-8080.
All right, always a pleasure. Guys, thanks so much for your time. Buckle up, and thanks for checking us out at sgtreport.com. The corporate propaganda antidote, real news 24/7. Have a terrific week ahead. God bless.